And welcome back to Flo's Sports Fix. And it's time to look at one of our Olympic teams, not normal Olympic team. It is the Paralympic team. And we're joined by Nat Browne, the Deputy Chef de Mission for the Australian Paralympic team. G'day, Nat. How are you today?
I'm really good, thanks, Clayton. How are you? Thanks for having me on today.
It is our pleasure. I want to know more about the Paralympic team. I have to confess that I never really was aware of it until London 2012 and a show that Adam Hills, the comedian, put on, and because of his disability with his foot. And he did that show, and I just fell in love with it. And then I've been watching it and following his adventures and other Paralympic things in that as well. And, of course, there's Kurt Fearnley and others that we hear about. But I just want to know more about it. So, firstly, your role, you're the Deputy Chef de Mission. So what does that role entail, and how did you get that role?
So that role entails, basically, I support our chef de mission, and that's Kate McLaughlin. I'm also the head of operations for the team. So that's just making sure essentially everything runs smoothly at games. But I've also been working on these games for the last 4 years and planning for it. So it's been a massive job. I actually got into this. My first games was actually London 2012 as well.
Oh, okay.
So I fell in love with the Paralympic movement at that first games, and I've been there ever since. So this is now my third Summer Games, and certainly, Tokyo, for these games, it's probably been the biggest challenge, but we're excited that it's still going ahead this year.
Yes, so far so good. I guess when I think of able-bodied athletes, the requirements that they might need from, just being able to go to the bathroom and that, things for the Paralympic athletes would have to be different. So how do you go through and navigate all that and deal with all those sort of things that we just take for granted or wouldn't even be aware of?
Totally. That's a really good question. And when you're organising the travel and logistics for a team, it comes down to just really understanding the requirements of every single different athlete. So if you're looking at air travel, it's understanding that some of our wheelchair athletes are the first to board the plane and they're the last to come off the plane. Our athletes have a larger number of equipment when they travel. They have extra games chairs, wheelchairs, different prosthetic pieces that they compete in, shower chairs, all sorts of stuff. When we're looking at accommodation for organising for our athletes, we have to understand accessibility of accommodation sites, whether it's hotels or apartments. And just to understand the size of our team, we've roughly got about 361 athletes and officials. Of those, 186 will be the athletes. And in that group, we've got 77 wheelchair users. So that's a large number of wheelchair users when you're trying to accommodate a team or travel together on a flight together. It's a big number, but we're now experts at what we do and getting our guys around, so we're all over it.
I've watched, as I mentioned before, with Adam's show and humour has played a big part in things. So what's the sense of humour like some of the athletes? Because I think they would be absolutely wicked, to be quite honest.
Oh, they're awesome. Sometimes we have athletes who are removing their prosthetic legs or, we've had some Christmas parties where some of the staff end up in their wheelchairs. So, look, they're a lot of the athletes, they're our friends first and foremost. I've been working with these guys for 11 years, and I know everyone that does join our team in some capacity is just addicted to it because the athletes are just fantastic to work with, and they're just like the rest of us. They're people with senses of humour, and sometimes they like to play tricks on us too. So, yeah, it's really fantastic.
I kind of feel playing the tricks on you guys would be almost a prerequisite for getting into the team.
Yeah, that's one way to keep our wits about us when we're organising all these things, so definitely.
Just from what you're saying to me, that I get the sense that it is a very rewarding job and role that you have. So can you give us a couple of rewarding moments that have happened to you?
You know what? I think, as I mentioned, this is my third games. I think it's as rewarding for me as it is for the athletes. And, when we spend, we understand athletes, Paralympic Games are every 4 years. Athletes spend 4 years training for the next games. And for us as staff members and officials, some of us actually spend 4 years planning for it as well. And we put our heart and soul into it. Everything we do is for the best intentions of our athletes and the team members. So when we see it all come together, when we see them come to that games and, they arrive at the village and they're standing at the blocks, and our athletes, when they finish competing, whether they get a PB, whether they get a bronze medal, a gold medal, or some of them it's just their first games and they're just really so proud of themselves for being there. We share that joy too. And it's not until we're all probably coming home on that flight home and we land back in Australia and we're exhausted, but it's a big celebration. I just feel like that everyone feels part of that team, and in some way everyone's contributed to that athlete's experience and to their result at the games. And for me, that's what makes it so enjoyable.
Can understand that totally. Who are some of our standout athletes? Because we get some household names through Olympics, and they tend to be mostly our swimmers and that. But who are some of our standout athletes that really we should have them as household names that we're not aware of, that you think are going to do very well at these Olympics?
At these Paralympics? Oh gosh, now you've really put me on the spot. Look, if I can. We've got our co-captains for these teams. We've got Riley Batt, who's a wheelchair rugby athlete. I think he's going to his fourth games. His first games was, I think, Athens, and he might have only been about 14 years old. So in terms of, back in the day, he was a new athlete, and just to see him come through, and now he's our team captain, is just phenomenal. We've also got Danny DeToro. It's her second games now. She's been our team captain. She was also the co-captain in Rio with Kurt Fernley. So she's moved across from two sports. She was previously wheelchair tennis, and now she's a table tennis athlete. So, look, I know I probably haven't answered your question and talked about the new blood coming through, but they're two senior athletes of ours who are just, they lead by example. And the reason why I've got them in place is so our new kids on the block really have some support on ground and have some really good role models that will prepare them for these games and for future games as well.
Well, that sounds excellent. No, that's fine. I didn't know who. I just was hoping you'd mention some names, and you've answered that perfectly, so very happy with that. And I guess that leads us to the elephant in the room question. There's been some speculation that these games will not go ahead, but we're all hopeful, and you're planning that it will be. Are you confident that you're going to be in Tokyo this year?
Yeah, look, we are. We know that the Japanese government, the International Paralympic Committee, and Tokyo 2020, who is the organising committee, they have been working tirelessly since the Games got postponed last year on the 24th of March. So they're doing everything they can to make sure that these Games go ahead successfully and safely. The Olympic Games are before us. They're about a month before us. So we know that, I guess there's a bit more pressure on the Olympic teams just to get that event completed successfully before us, but we're doing everything. We continue to plan. There's a lot of contingency planning for us because a lot of information is still unknown, or we're still figuring it out, but we're very confident that the Games are going ahead this year, and we're excited for it.
So are we. I love the Olympics and I love the Paralympics. I'm looking forward to it. My wife would prefer me not to be, because she thinks I should be doing other things more active, but I love watching it, but that's just me. What's the gold target? How many...
I'll just jump in. Make sure you tune into Channel 7. They will be covering our games, so it's available for everyone to watch, which will be exciting that it's on mainstream.
That is good. That is great news as well. But what's the gold medal target?
Look, we actually don't have a gold medal target. For us, as I mentioned before, whether it's a personal best, it's a bronze medal, it's an athlete attending their first games, it's not something that's at the forefront of our plannings and KPIs. So, look, I think particularly given the postponement for these games, the impact of the pandemic, our athletes being in isolation for a very long time last year, it's impacted everyone's ability to train at their optimal levels. Still, our athletes have struggled to get any international competition under their belt in the last 12 months. So, in terms of those gold medal performances, it's not something that we're focusing on. I think attending the games, getting the performances we want is really important, but we're not focusing on gold medals at this stage.
Fair enough. That was a very good politician's answer. So sorry for putting you on the spot for that one, Nat.
No, not at all.
With these games, it could also be the last for some athletes. Is there any that this will be their last games?
Not that I know of personally, but yeah, we are expecting some retirements. And look, I think the postponement for the games threw a few of our athletes out. There might have been some that were ready to retire at the end of 2020 when the games were originally scheduled. So the extension of another 12 months meant that they had to change those plans. So We are expecting some retirements at the end of this Games. Also to note that the next Games in 2024 will be in Paris. So that's now only 3 years away. So there might be some athletes who were considering retiring at the end of these Games, but given that the next one is a bit closer, we might see some people just hang in there for a bit longer.
Okay. What about the Commonwealth Games? Do we go to the Commonwealth Games as well?
Yeah, we've got some para sports that are included as part of the Commonwealth Games program. So that's in Birmingham next year in 2022. I believe that's in July. So we'll have some of our athletes that will go across to that as well.
Well, we can talk about that at a later date. Well, Nat, it has been a pleasure chatting to you. Thank you so much for spending some time with us and just telling us a bit more about the Paralympic team. We wish them all the very best here at Flow. We certainly do. And I'm looking forward to hopefully chatting to some of the athletes over the coming weeks. We wish you all the best. Please pass on our regards to the entire team. And they've got great support here at all the team here at Flow. So thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.